This was day 924 of this Trump administration, and it was something the president said this afternoon that got our attention late today. This was in response to a question about the ongoing Russian attack on our election system, the warning that was just repeated by Robert Mueller just a few days ago.
Robert Mueller said last week that Russia is interfering in U.S. elections right now. Raise that with Vladimir Putin.
You don't really believe this. Do you believe this now?
Okay. Raise that with
Fine.
President Putin yesterday.
We didn't talk about that. I spoke with President Putin of Russia yesterday. They're having massive fires in their forests. They have tremendous. I've never seen anything like it. It's very big. I just offered our assistance because we're very good at putting out forest fires, frankly.
Mueller said right now he believes Russia is interfering in the election.
Well, I watched Mueller. I'm not sure Mueller knows what's going on. You want to know the truth. But all I do know is he said no collusion with us, no collusion, and ultimately no obstruction, because it led to no obstruction by a very smart group of people, including our Attorney General. So no collusion, no obstruction. As far as Mueller's performance, you would have to say it was maybe not so good.
About that first response by the president, you don't really believe that. Never before has our country felt more vulnerable to attack in real time. In this case, because we've been told we're under an ongoing attack in real time, while at the same time that view is not shared by the head of our government, who took the oath about preserving and protecting our way of life. His view now famously extends to his enforcer in the Senate, who has now been tagged with the nickname Moscow Mitch, born in this very studio, for not even allowing election-hardening legislation to be brought up for a vote before the Senate. Don't take our word for it. It was just last week the Senate Intelligence Committee released a report that concluded Russia targeted election systems in all of our 50 states. Then this past weekend, we learned that the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coats, will step down later this month. Trump famously and publicly sided with Putin over Coats while he was alongside the Russian leader there in Helsinki. And for good measure, here is how Robert Mueller summed up the ongoing attack from Russia.
Is this, in your investigation, did you think that this was a single attempt by the Russians to get involved in our election, or did you find evidence to suggest they'll try to do this again?
No, it wasn't a single attempt. They're doing it as we sit here. And they expect to do it during the next campaign.
It was right after that testimony from Mueller that McConnell blocked the election security legislation in the Senate. Earlier this week, he defended the move in the face of attacks from Democrats and the news media. We'll have much more on that later on. Meanwhile, after fending off attacks from Democrats in last night's debate, former Vice President Joe Biden spoke to reporters today about Donald Trump's very narrow path to victory back in 2016.
If I get the nomination, I will win Michigan. I promise you that. I will win Pennsylvania. I will win Ohio. I will win these states that he got 72 extra thousand votes on to give himself an election. Look, folks, it's not there was this great migration to him. It didn't occur. We're talking about 72,500 votes in 3 states that changed. Otherwise, Hillary Clinton would be president with a margin of over 3 million votes.
And on the upside, this moment almost got by us tonight. A seemingly monumental update from the president at his rally on our national health. This is from Cincinnati tonight.
The things we're doing in our country today, there's never been anything like it. We will be ending the AIDS epidemic shortly in America and curing childhood cancer very shortly.
So we've got that going for us. And here for our leadoff discussion on a Thursday night, Philip Rucker, Pulitzer Prize-winning White House bureau chief for The Washington Post, former U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance, who spent 25 years as a federal prosecutor, and Philip Mudd, former deputy director for both the CIA Counterterrorist Center and the FBI's National Security Branch. He also happens to be the author of the new book that we'll be talking about later in this hour. It is called Black Site, the CIA in the post-9/11 world. Good evening and welcome to all of you. Mr. Rucker, I'd like to start with you. You don't really believe that was kind of a toss-off answer by the president to a subject that defines who we are and what we've become now. So much so that in the legal realm, on just social media last night, in the public domain, the bots went to work with messaging trying to foment racial division just in the hours after the Democratic debate.
Yeah, Brian, this is not some sort of partisan point of view. This is fact, according to our intelligence agencies, according to all of our intelligence agencies. It's not just former special counsel Robert Mueller who testified to it, but the president's own handpicked intelligence chiefs, including Dan Coats, the former or soon-to-be former director of national intelligence, who have been warning for several years now that Russia is continuing to try to interfere in our election, will try to do so again in 2020. And that other countries may follow suit. This is a profound, serious threat to American democracy, but it's also one that the president does not take seriously. We've seen it time and again where he has denied denied the intelligence that Russia has tried to interfere in the election. And it's all rooted in his own feelings about his own election, his insecurity that by admitting that Russia did this interference campaign, it would somehow delegitimize Trump's electoral victory. So that's been sort of a blinder for the president.
And Joyce Vance, something that speaks to your line of work. Just before we came on the air, our friend Ken Vogel at the New York Times tweeted out this: new court filing. Rick Gates is still cooperating with prosecutors and is a potential witness in the trials of Greg Craig for lying about Ukrainian work, Roger Stone for lying about WikiLeaks, and Paul Manafort for loan-related fraud in New York. Joyce, what does this mean? What's the takeaway here, other than the fact that legal jeopardy continues?
Rick Gates seems to have been one of the most successful cooperators that the Mueller investigation produced. I don't think that there's anything very surprising here, Brian. We knew that he would cooperate. The beginning work on a pre-sentence report is relatively routine. It has to happen before a defendant can be sentenced. He has to have access to it sufficiently in advance to review it and make any objections he might want to make. I think the biggest piece of information we get out of this filing is that apparently Gates's cooperation is coming to an end. He won't, for instance, apparently be a witness in anything to do with the inaugural investigation that's widely believed to be underway or any other federal cases.
And now, Phil Mudd, by way of welcoming you here, this is where your life's work intersects with the news today. Mm-hmm. When you hear the president say you don't really believe that, do you? What happens inside you internally? And part B, what's the reality?
Boy, it makes me hurt. I spent 25 years doing this. The president has three responsibilities here. Number one, somebody's got to confront the Russians. That sits in the Oval Office. Clearly, the president's not going to do that. Number two, the boring part of this is if you want to confront this, somebody's got to bring a hammer down on the bureaucracy. Homeland Security, FBI, CIA. They don't work together extremely well unless somebody in the Oval Office says, guys, women, sit down and let me tell you what to do. And the last part, the part we're clearly missing, is somebody's got to tell the American people, especially when the margins of victory in these states are so small, here's what to watch out for. There's only one spokesperson for America. That's the president. He's telling people, don't worry about it.
How are your colleagues in the business dealing with this kind of talk?
I think when you're in the business, you look at the leadership that you have. Most of the colleagues I have don't meet with the president, and that leadership has to represent the truth. In the CIA, I know the CIA director. I guarantee you she's sitting there saying, we've got a mission objective. That mission objective doesn't change regardless of Democrat, Republican. It doesn't change regardless of whether the president tweets. So it's demoralizing as someone who spends a career in the service for the president to attack you. He's attacked me personally. But at the same time, the mission is so compelling. If you're sitting there looking at the Russians trying to come after an election system, regardless of what the president says, you're going to be motivated.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.